She said it with a laugh, but not the kind that invites you in. The kind that gets passed around like a joke that you're the punchline of. He's too boring to miss. The table went quiet for half a beat, the kind of pause people pretend not to notice. Then came the polite chuckles, a clink of silverware. Someone offered a vague, "Come on, he's not that bad," like they were defending a weather report. I didn't say anything, just smiled like I was in on it, like I agreed. We were seated near the end of the long table at Amanda and Josh's townhouse. One of those dinners where wine flowed fast and people told stories louder with each glass. My wife, Megan, was in rare form. She had the whole group pulled into her orbit, talking about her office and her lively coworkers, laughing too easily at their quirks, like she missed them already and we hadn't even left dessert yet. I watched her lean into the conversation, eyes sharp, hands animated. She didn't glance at me once. "Do you miss him when he travels?" Someone asked. I think it was Anna from her Pilates group. The tone was light, teasing. Megan smirked, tilting her wine glass with mock consideration. Then she looked across the table and dropped it. "He's too boring to miss." Everyone laughed, some louder than others. Josh gave me that bro sympathy nod, like we were all supposed to laugh at ourselves now and then. I kept the smile, didn't flinch, I just let it settle. Inside, something quiet snapped free. Not anger, that's too loud, too heavy. What I felt was colder, a shift in the gears. Like something had finally clicked into place, not in my chest, but behind the eyes, something watching, taking notes. I hadn't even wanted to go that night. I'd just gotten back from a 2-day trip across 3 states for vendor negotiations, my mind still full of spreadsheets and shipping projections. I'd offered to stay home. Megan insisted. "You need to be social again," she said, curling her hair in the mirror. "God, you work too much. It's like living with a spreadsheet sometimes." The joke then had sounded light too. I'd laughed, not loud, not angry, just enough. The dinner dragged on after that moment, but I didn't hear most of it. I was in the room, nodding when needed, sipping my drink slowly. Megan reached for my hand once under the table, more out of habit than anything else. I let her. Later that night, I stood in our bathroom brushing my teeth while she texted someone in bed, her screen lighting up her face every few seconds. She laughed once, softly. The same laugh she'd used when talking about her high-energy coworkers. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't want to know. I watched myself in the mirror. The man looking back wasn't sad. He wasn't weak. He looked still, like he'd stopped running some race he never agreed to run. "Too boring to miss," I repeated under my breath just once to hear how it sounded when it wasn't wrapped in polite laughter. And then I went to bed. Tomorrow I knew would come something different, not louder, not angrier, just real, and I'd be ready. 3 days after that dinner, I got the email. It wasn't meant for me. A recruiter had blasted it out by mistake to my old firm's alumni network. A scattershot plea to fill a position no one seemed eager to take. The subject line alone made most people scroll past. Logistics Director, Confidential International Operation, remote and demanding. I opened it anyway. The description read like a dare. High pay, yes, obscenely high if you knew how to read between lines. But buried under the offer was the cost. Isolated regions, indefinite time commitments, brutal conditions, constant movement. And the client. A reclusive billionaire funding a humanitarian effort so massive and logistically fragile. Only one person had lasted longer than a month in the role, and he left with a ruptured appendix, a divorce, and reportedly a mild drinking problem. Everyone passed. I bookmarked it. That night Megan was curled up on the couch with her legs draped over mine. She scrolled endlessly through her phone, pausing every few swipes to tap out replies, grin at something on the screen, then keep scrolling. I had my laptop open. The job post still sat there. I hesitated a few seconds too long. "What's that?" she asked without looking up. "Job listing, weird one. Humanitarian logistics, real remote, high intensity. UN clearances, disaster zones, the whole thing," she snorted. That sounds like the exact opposite of you." She didn't mean it to hurt. I could tell by her tone, not malicious, just honest, the way people are when they don't think you're capable of surprising them. "You'd lose your mind in a week," she added, still smiling at her phone. "Too quiet, too intense, you hate sweating." I didn't respond, just nodded like I agreed and let her laugh quietly at her screen again. That night, while she lay beside me texting until her screen dimmed, I applied. The form was brief but meticulous. Background checks, field adaptability survey, medical self-reporting, leadership philosophy statement. I answered every question like I had nothing to lose and no one to impress. That turned out to be the right tone. 2 days later, I was invited to an encrypted video interview with someone who didn't share their name, only credentials. The next morning, my phone lit up with a New York number and a brief sentence: "You've been selected. We need someone who can vanish into responsibility. Can you disappear and still lead?" I replied within 10 seconds. "Yes." By the time Megan kissed me goodbye that Friday, her lips barely grazing mine, the contract had already been signed. I didn't tell her. Instead, I began to vanish quietly. I started consolidating accounts, transferring money to a separate private bank I'd opened a year ago but never used. I canceled joint auto pays and rerouted forwarding addresses under the guise of project work. I called in a favor from an old friend in global logistics to secure a secondary phone with international encryption, untraceable and preloaded with only work contacts. I arranged housing overseas under a pseudonym, one of 5 potential staging locations I'd be rotating through. I moved like someone stepping off a chessboard, piece by piece. At dinner the following Monday, I mentioned a consulting opportunity that might take me away for a while. Megan barely looked up from her salad. "For how long?" she asked between bites. "Could be a month, could be more," she shrugged. "Well, try not to overpack." That was it. No follow-up, no curiosity, no concern. She didn't ask what kind of project, didn't wonder where. That night we watched a documentary on her laptop in bed, some overproduced special on coral reef collapses narrated by an actor she loved. She laughed at all the jokes and made 3 comments about how alive the ocean felt compared to spreadsheets. I nodded, smiled, watched the reef fade into blue. 2 days later, I boarded the first flight under a temporary alias, carrying only one bag, a hardcase laptop, and the silence Megan had left me in. But I carried something else now, too. Not resentment, not grief. Something colder, cleaner, momentum. I didn't disappear all at once. That's how amateurs get noticed, with a bang, a slammed door, an announcement designed to sting. But quiet withdrawal, that lingers, that haunts. Especially when it's disguised as routine. I started with the bank accounts. A few subtle moves at first, closing the joint savings under the pretext of consolidation, removing my name from the utilities, stopping auto renewals for the subscriptions she never noticed I paid for. She got a few emails, probably. She never mentioned them. Then came the physical trail. I rerouted my mail through a secure forwarding service with rotating drop points. I stopped using our shared cloud calendar, turned off location sharing on my phone, draining battery too fast, I said. She accepted that without a blink. I prepped the apartment as if I might come back but never intended to. Left it clean, paid up through the month, and didn't tell her when my name came off the lease. It wasn't immediate. It was gradual, intentional, like the tide pulling back before a wave. The logistics team on the project had already given me my first deployment site, an operations staging post in the southern corridor of a humanitarian corridor overlapping 3 jurisdictions. The airstrip was functional. The quarters weren't. Perfect. I arranged my arrival through a charter from a nondescript airfield. No customs, no questions. My housing was one of those modular structures built for endurance, not comfort. Tin roof, reinforced walls, a cot, a water purifier, and satellite-grade comms that lit up only when I needed. On my second day there, I coordinated the unloading of 2 tons of emergency supplies via unmanned airdrops. The following morning, I mapped out an evac protocol in case the flash floods hit the eastern range. People listened to me. They didn't ask twice. They called me director. Back home, Megan sent a few short texts. Nothing emotional. Just the kind you send when you're keeping appearances. Let me know if you want me to water the plant. She meant your plant, not ours. I didn't reply. A week passed. Then, too, she didn't notice I hadn't checked our shared grocery app once. Didn't ask when the Netflix profile named us vanished. Didn't call when the flight tracker she used during my business trip stopped updating. She assumed I was on another forgettable work trip, lost in reports and technicality, a background hum she didn't need to tune into. Meanwhile, I was in motion daily, managing food security routing across unstable terrain, negotiating landing windows with UN liaisons and border patrols who didn't care about polite diplomacy. I adapted fast. That surprised me. Not the workload, the clarity, the absence of static. Each night I wrote summaries to myself, not for records but to stay sharp. Each one ended the same way: she hasn't noticed yet. Then the coffee shop closed. It was a minor thing on the surface, a boutique spot Megan adored 2 blocks from the apartment. They knew her name, her order, her tendency to show up 5 minutes before closing. When it shut down unexpectedly due to a buyout, I knew it would disorient her. She texted me. "Did you know about Ground Bloom closing?" I left it on read. The next week her car, the one we shared, missed its scheduled maintenance. I'd stopped managing that calendar, too. She followed up with a message laced in casual confusion. "Thought we had service booked for the 11th. Did you cancel?" I didn't answer. Then came the rent. I had removed my name from the auto debit 2 weeks before. The landlord's notice must have hit her inbox like a cold splash. Her next text was the first that cracked. "Hey, can we talk? What's going on?" That one I waited a full day to read. Back in the field, I was overseeing an emergency convoy reroute due to washed-out roads. We were 72 hours behind schedule and still faster than most government responses. My team worked through the night. Not one of them knew or cared that someone once called me boring. It wasn't until one of our media consultants sent me a clipping from a niche global logistics journal, a piece on the increasing privatization of humanitarian command systems, that the next move arrived on her end. The article didn't name me directly, but the photo did. There I was, standing in the command center we'd carved out of a converted cargo hub, headset, flight manifest in hand, a wall of satellite feeds glowing behind me, clean-shaven, focused, real. The caption just read, "Private Precision, the Quiet Rise of Civilian Command." A week later, Megan finally texted something that wasn't a question, it was a voicemail. "Hey, I saw something online. That's you." Her voice cracked on the last word. I played it once. Then I got back to work. Megan used to be fluent in silence. She spoke it like a native, long pauses between answers, non-committal nods, the kind of cold affection you don't realize is withholding until you experience actual warmth. But now her silence was different, heavier, like she was waiting for an echo that wouldn't come. I kept communication sparse, professional, no warmth, no cruelty, just the sort of delayed responses you'd expect from someone deep in triage work, which I was. The difference was I liked it. She sent messages every few days. At first they were harmless. "How's it going over there? Need anything from home? Your mom asked if she should hold your mail." I ignored the first, replied briefly to the third, have her forward it to the drop address. "Thanks." Then, without warning, her tone shifted. The questions stopped being about logistics. They got personal. "Are you okay? You've been different. Are we still us?" I didn't answer that one. Instead, I reviewed aerial supply maps with military coordinators from 3 continents and signed off on a refugee camp expansion in a floodplain no one else wanted to touch. I negotiated air rights with a hostile local administrator who threatened to seize our aircraft. By the end of that meeting, he was apologizing and asking for a job. Respect was a currency I hadn't used in years. Turns out, it spends fast when you know your value. Back home, things were unraveling faster than I expected. The coffee shop she loved had been a social anchor. Her photo was still on their community board when it shut down. Without it, her routine began to fray. I saw it through the timestamps on her messages. They used to come late after dinner. Now they landed mid-afternoon like she had nowhere else to be. Then came the car. Our shared SUV started flashing alerts she didn't know how to fix. I'd managed all the maintenance through an app tied to my email. She messaged again. "Can you check the service schedule? I think something's wrong with the brakes." I let that one go unanswered too. Rent bounced next. She texted in a panic. "Why did the payment fail? Did you move something?" I replied 10 hours later. "You'll need to update your payment method." No greeting. No signature, just facts. I knew she was starting to feel it, not just my absence, but the removal of all the invisible scaffolding I'd held in place. Megan liked freedom until it required effort. Now she was discovering the difference between being independent and simply unburdened. I saw the photo on her Instagram by accident. Someone else forwarded it. She was at a rooftop bar, holding a drink with a twist of lime and a hollow smile. The caption read, "Sometimes boring is just safe." 2 days later, another post. A group selfie with coworkers I didn't recognize, all smiles and wine glasses, but her eyes looked distant, like someone trying too hard to prove she hadn't noticed the world changing behind her. Still, she didn't mention the article, not directly. Then one night I was debriefing with an envoy team when my satellite phone buzzed. A voicemail again. No transcription. I stepped outside away from the noise and hit play. "Hey," her voice said, hesitant. "I saw something online. That's you." She paused. You could hear her swallow. Then quieter, "You look different, like you belong there." Another pause, longer. "I don't know if you're ignoring me or just busy, but I wanted to say I'm proud of you. And I miss you. I think I didn't say that enough. Maybe ever." Click. No tears, no apology. Just the sound of someone realizing too late that silence doesn't always mean patience. Sometimes it's the sound of someone walking away with nothing left to say. I didn't play it again. Instead, I set the phone down, walked back inside, and signed off on another night operation. The world didn't pause for her regrets, and neither did I. Regret doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in quiet, persistent, like humidity under paint. You don't notice it until things start to peel. After her voicemail, Megan started texting daily. Not long messages, just drops of attention, attempts to hook into my silence. "Hope your day went okay. Made pasta tonight. The one you used to like. Remember the red couch at the lake house? Josh and Amanda got one." I responded to none of them, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. I was stationed in a new field hub by then, drier climate, higher altitude, closer to the edge of a region where local infrastructure had fractured weeks earlier. My title had changed quietly. No announcement, just a line in the new clearance documents. Global Director, Civilian Ops Interface. Fewer boots on ground orders. More oversight. Broader reach. I ran ops for 6 zones now. Coordinated international handoffs between military logistics, civilian supply chains, and NGO field workers, all from a converted forward base that hadn't existed a month ago. I managed a team of 80, half of whom had never heard of me 3 weeks prior. They followed my lead without question. That was the difference, I realized, not the authority but the precision. Out here, I didn't need to defend who I was. My presence had utility. My decisions moved things. Back home, I had been a placeholder. Now I was momentum. Megan, meanwhile, was unraveling under the weight of her own performance. Our mutual friends started reaching out, not to ask where I was, but to say how strange she'd become. "Has Megan talked to you?" Amanda texted. "She seems off, kind of scattered." "She keeps saying you've changed," Josh added later. "But not in a bad way, just distant." I didn't respond to them either. Then someone sent me a clip, an offhand post from Megan's Instagram story. She was at a restaurant mid-laugh, someone else's voice off camera saying, "You're glowing lately." Her reply was too fast. "It's called freedom," she said, raising her glass. "Sometimes boring is just safe." It stung. Not because I believed it, but because I recognized the lie in it. Safe wasn't what she'd wanted. Boring wasn't the problem. She'd mistaken stillness for absence. Thought steadiness meant lack of depth. The difference now, she couldn't reach me to correct that mistake. And suddenly my silence wasn't passive. It had become impenetrable. That's when the long email came. No subject line, just her full name in the sender, Megan R. Delaney. It was measured, polite. The kind of letter someone writes when they're trying to sound stable, but you can feel the cracks beneath the wording. She apologized for not being supportive, for making assumptions, for laughing at things I should have protected. She said she didn't realize what I'd built inside myself, that she thought I was safe to mock because I'd always be there. She asked for a video call, just one, said maybe we could reconnect, maybe find our way back to something. I read it twice, didn't respond. Instead, I printed it out, folded it neatly, slipped it into a slim envelope along with the finalized divorce papers. No explanation, just documents, and one other thing. A printout of the news piece, clean PDF, full resolution image of me in the command center, title bold beneath my name. The same caption as before, the quiet rise of civilian command. No note, no message, just the facts she'd chosen not to see when they were right in front of her. I mailed it from a military courier outpost with global priority routing. 3 days later, a delivery service confirmed receipt at our old apartment. I imagined her alone, sitting at the kitchen counter where we used to eat takeout, opening that envelope in a room that still held echoes of a voice she once called boring, and now couldn't hear at all. I didn't need to watch her fall apart. I'd already left the theater. I used to imagine that if things ever ended between us, it would be loud. Arguments, tears, maybe even shouting across a dim apartment at 2 a.m., the kind of scene where someone slams a door just for punctuation. Instead, the final blow arrived in silence. No message, no phone call, just my envelope on her kitchen counter. Megan never responded to it directly. No email, no text, but she didn't need to. I heard about her reaction secondhand. Amanda, who still talked to both of us, mentioned it over a brief message one night. She got your letter, she wrote. Didn't say much, just sat there for a while. Then she folded it back up like it was something sacred or dangerous. I pictured that moment too clearly. Megan standing alone in the apartment, holding proof that the life she mocked had slipped through her fingers. Not in rage, not in revenge, just quietly like oxygen leaking from a sealed room. The divorce filing was already in motion by the time she read it. I'd retained legal counsel through a firm that specialized in international clients. Everything was precise, efficient, emotionless. She contested nothing. A month earlier, she might have argued, tried to delay, called her own lawyer. But now, with the story already out in the world, my story public and visible, there was nothing left to reclaim. What could she say? That she left the man who now ran cross-continental operations, that she'd mocked someone who now coordinated efforts with global governments, that she laughed at me in front of friends and now I was the only name on articles that mattered. No one would say it out loud, but they saw it. Her coworkers, the ones she once called high energy, the ones she drank with on rooftops, they started pulling back. The smiles cooled, the invitations slowed. Even her work group chat went quiet. People don't flock to insecurity. They smell it and back away. Megan tried to control the narrative at first. Amanda told me she mentioned our split casually one night, trying to pass it off as a mutual decision, very healthy, very adult. But when someone asked why she looked like she hadn't slept in days, she couldn't hold the act. "She said you were changing," Amanda texted me. "Said you'd become intense, like she didn't recognize you." I did change, but not the way she meant. Out here in the field, I was operating at a scale neither of us would have imagined a year ago. I made decisions that shaped entire supply lines, built temporary infrastructures that kept hundreds alive. My signature moved aircraft. My approval rerouted medical logistics across borders. No one here laughed at what I used to be. They didn't care who I was before, only that I could do the job now. I'd earned respect not by noise but by clarity. And Megan, she was alone in an apartment paid for by no one, haunted by a man who never raised his voice, never fought back, never called her names, only left. That was the confrontation, not a scream, not a slammed door. Just the silence of someone who'd finally realized his worth and decided never to explain it again. There was no ceremony to the end. No final plea, no late-night knock at a hotel door. The silence stretched out long enough to become permanent. Megan signed the divorce papers and mailed them back without note or comment. The lawyer said it was the fastest, uncontested filing he'd ever processed for a client overseas. 2 weeks later, the decree was finalized. And still, she said nothing. I watched the aftermath unfold through whispers, not headlines. Megan didn't post about it, but people knew. Word travels faster in silence than through statements. The friends who once toasted her rooftop stories began to drift. Not out of loyalty to me, most barely knew the depth of what had happened, but because something about her had changed. She tried to hold onto the identity she'd built around spontaneity and charm, but it didn't land anymore. The group dinners started happening without her. The coworker who once called her the spark in every room didn't invite her to her engagement party. Even Amanda, who never picked sides, began to answer her texts more slowly. Because here's the truth. People can't follow someone who betrayed stability and then mourns its absence. And Megan, she wore her regret like an accessory she couldn't quite match with anything. Meanwhile, I moved forward. My title wasn't just formal now, it carried weight. Global Director came with political leverage, cross-border mobility, and access that made old versions of me seem unrecognizable. I'd spent the last month coordinating a multilateral logistics exchange with representatives from 4 different governments. The airstrip I landed on that day was one we'd built from nothing. I didn't plan to stay in this world forever, but for now it was right, focused, demanding in a way that stripped away noise. No one here asked where I came from. They asked what I could do, and I answered. The journalist who showed up that week came from a mid-tier outlet, nothing flashy. She was young, sharp, and genuinely curious. Said she'd been tracking unsung ops personnel shaping critical delivery zones. I nearly waved her off until I saw the clarity in her questions. She didn't care about hero stories. She wanted systems, decisions, the people behind the levers. Toward the end of our interview, she hesitated before asking, "People say you used to be invisible. That true?" I smiled at her, not smug, not bitter, just quiet and real. "Only to the wrong people." That answer didn't come from a place of pain anymore. It came from peace. Later that day, I stepped out onto a packed jungle runway under sweltering sun, the air thick with jet fuel and heat. A convoy of relief workers waited nearby, new arrivals, full of questions and too much gear. I greeted them with a nod, gave a short briefing, handed off instructions, and walked toward the helicopter. As the rotors spun up, the noise drowned everything. I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me I needed to see.